Yeah, we can watch the TGS video actually before we...
With YouTube Premium, I get ad-free music and it's...
Who
a couple days ago, and
sorry.
Guys, the first condition is pretty obvious, but the second is rather interesting because it basically prevents characters that have some front-loaded damage, like for example a nuke like Mavuika's.
Klugi, surely it won't work with Mavuika, right? Surely you can't just open with a charge attack on Mavuika and get your burst a bit later.
This maximum attack buffs isn't on the same level as Bennett's when it comes to buffing a single character.
I wonder actually, is she gonna be better than Bennett? Probably not, right? Because in order to be better than Bennett, she kind of needs to have access to the bounty buff, and for Mavuika. But yeah, and Mavuika teams don't really run a second witch. Shoot gross. Yeah, that's kind of fake though.
As Bennett, it doesn't have a...
maybe no, because Fischl isn't like that appealing. And she still provides the 20% buff to Mavuika. I think she does, yeah. But that's just not good. That's not really better than another support set like Noblesse or whatever. So like half of her value is cut down basically.
Up to 600 on Nicole's buff affects the whole team, and that's very good when you have one or more attack scaling sub DPS. This is the case for characters like Durin, Emily, or Chiori, all of which will find new places in the meta thanks to...
Alright.
This is the bigger issue. This extra attack has no type tag. By this I mean that, so far, it doesn't seem that this attack can be categorized as normal attack, charge attack...
That's not saying there's no tag type. That's saying the ICD tag is not skill, but like the ICD tag doesn't mean... Like that's not what that means. That means it doesn't share internal cooldown with the burst. Like if it said tag elemental burst, it would mean that it shares internal cooldown with a burst. I mean, it's possible that it also just doesn't have a tag, but it's not what this data is saying. It's... You guys can't see it, actually. This is called ICD source. ICD source is what they call the like, how they call the ICD in the code.
This is somewhat through a Constellation Zero investment if the weapon you're using on him is Serpent Spine. I'm saying that because Spine's passive provides a damage bonus that loses stacks if the holder gets hit, and
this is, by the way, this is the cope we gotta fucking have. We have to assume Nicole's shield is the difference between Serpent Spine having stacks and not having stacks in order for Nicole to actually not look awful. That's not a good sign. Okay, also, to be fair, like, what the fuck do you mean one stack average? If you're averaging a one stack on Serpent Spine, you're getting hit so much you're already dead. You are not averaging one stack.
By changing Varka's weapon to his signature, however, the gap gets smaller. Part of it is because the difference in Spine stacks is not part...
Okay, what? I didn't have the difference as that big. He's adding 2 whole seconds to the rotation from Nicole. I don't think it's 2 whole seconds. I'm pretty sure it's not 2 whole seconds, because this is not an E-skip Bennett rotation. It should be a 1 second difference, not a 2 second difference. It would be a 2 second difference-ish compared to E-skip Bennett, but you're not doing E-skip Bennett in this team, I think. 220-80R, this is not E-skip Bennett for sure.
Moreover, when you add Varka's Constellation 1 to the picture, the gap becomes even smaller.
Oh man, that's gotta be a typo. Okay, apparently he was doing E-skip with this one. That sounds... a bit optimistic, I think. Like, without favs. With fav Venti, I can get behind E-skip, but without favs, it seems optimistic to me.
I've calculated some overload teams as well, where Bennett is not typically present, and the core is usually one of Mavuika and Durin as support, and then Chevreuse. First, let's take a look at Klee, so I XRI on field.
Okay, where am I expecting Klee to be at? Klee's current overload teams generally run Fischl, Chores, and then the last lot can either be Bennett or Durin, and both are very similar. But that means you already have the trigger condition for bounty. So putting Nicole in there doesn't add the bounty set, right? I'm expecting like maybe a 5% upgrade.
I've tried replacing both.
I was wrong. It's a 1% downgrade. Oh, okay, my bad. Okay, one thing here. I'm like fairly certain Nicole EQ will be faster than Durin EEQ. So you should be able to get like a little bit more attacks on Klee. He's doing TTDS Nicole. Yeah, this is a team that can. Because Klee cooldown forces you to 20-second rotations anyways. So you kind of lose the downside of TTDS every other rotation. I mean, it doesn't really force you to 20 seconds is the thing. Like, it's like half real and half fake.
I want to add that removing Chevreuse from the team, of course, removes the restriction of overload as well, but Fischl is very good for the team nonetheless, so she should stay very competitive in the slot for now.
What would be your other viable units to use instead of Fischl here? Maybe you use Albedo here. 42 damage percent does kind of pop off. Bennett, you can't use Bennett. You need to trigger a reaction for Durin. Venti, you could use Venti, I suppose, yeah. Yeah, Prune C6 is probably pretty good. Ooh, Emilie, that's an interesting one. Emilie's probably pretty decent as well. Kazuha, real. I mean, if you're gonna be doing that, Prune is gonna be better, right? C0 Prune probably beats Kazuha already. Kazuha can groove the balls. Yeah. Official Witch Buffs is actually good here. Yeah, Official Witch Buffs is 45% attack to Klee and official personal damage. I don't think it's your only option. I do actually expect Prune to be better if you have C6 Prune. What about Linnea?
Then I calculated Varesa. The only replaceable characters here are Chevreuse and Yansan.
I don't know if I'd call Yansan replaceable in this team. That seems like a lot more mini bursts than you would actually be able to do.
Because Nicole applies no pyro to make overload consistent if she's replacing Durin. It's generally better to replace Yansan here if you...
Okay, what if we do replace Durin anyways, though? Because Nicole is a catalyst, so you can swap out and do one normal attack. But then you still don't have Hexerai, so Nicole is kind of a fraud. Isn't Bennett better? Bennett has issues with uptime when you do that. Oh, what the fuck is 161 ER Varesa? That can't be right. That cannot be right. No. At that point, you just fucking accept that you get one mini burst every other rotation. There's no way you're building this much ER. No way in hell. Why does Nicole need Hexerai in that Varesa team? For the set bonus. The set bonus is useless if you don't have Hexerai, and the set bonus is like half of Nicole's value.
There are also teams where Nicole is a more meaningful addition. The clearest case is Kinich, where Durin was previously a good character in, but not really maximized.
The biggest issue with the Kinich team is that Durin was already good for Kinich, but most of the Kinich teams didn't get 2 Hexerai. So just the new set, it's not really a major increase for the Kinich team. You need to also put a Hexerai unit in there. That's why Nicole is quite good there.
There is Vrizzly as well, that finally gets a semi-decent composition with...
Semi-decent, huh? Emily is probably worse than Citlali here. Like, Melt Durin would kind of eclipse Grizzly.
Team Navia.
20.5 seconds? It should not take that long. Should it? Am I underestimating like how much field time Navia needs, or is that just like, because I don't have Navia. Who could I use as the placeholder for Navia? And who could I use as the placeholder for Nicole? Ito. I don't have an Ito either. I'm gonna use Linnea as my placeholder. And then for Nicole, is Mavuika. Linnea N2 is so much faster than Navia N2. Does it look like I'm canceling the N2 as quickly as I can? I'm trying to like, okay, fine, whatever. Kaito, send me your fucking... Alright. Who's our placeholder for Durin then? Kazuha?
Sounds good to me.
Oh, Kalis, this tabarnak. Alright, so we do...
A proper send-off! A pyroclastic surge! Full throttle!
Fallen leaves. Adorn...
Hey there! Coming at ya!
I should have held, but it's fine. Okay, maybe that was very optimistic, actually. But yeah, so I guess I was way too kind to Navia. You burst every other rotation with Albedo? That sounds wrong. That sounds worse than going ER-Sen. The burst does a good amount of... especially with Nicole. Gets the attack buff on the whole burst. It sounds wrong to burst every other rotation. Mavuika E, Nicole EQ, Sucrose E, Citlali EQ N1, Mavuika Q... 3CF. Yeah, that's pretty pathetic. Yeah, people expected Nicole to make Varka Mavuika level, but actually Nicole made Mavuika Varka level. Tweet it? Okay, fine. I'm gonna include the TGS face in the screenshot. Guys, you know, I actually wonder how good she would be for Inefa. Yeah, the problem is that Columbina doesn't get anything, so it's not great for Binefa, which is pretty unfortunate. On-field Mona? Meh, that's not really good. If you're using her in an Inefa team, you probably just bring Sucrose last slot. Unless you mean like Mona, Nicole, Durin, Inefa. Like let's think about like what Nicole needs to actually be good. Let's have some theoretical characters, okay? We're gonna have Bliss, okay? And we're also gonna take a look at maybe like Kliss as well. Oh yeah, if we do 24 of them, we'll get to Slice. That's crazy. Let's take a look at like Hypercarry, Nicole, damage buff, Shred. Because I want to like quantify how much Nicole does for your teams compared to other options in a bunch of different situations. So I guess we start with Bennett here. Your carry will have 46.6. They'll have 20%, Pyro Resonance, Substats, Noblesse, and then like either a set or a passive or whatever that gives them 40 to 50% attack. We go to 350 plus 1050. Where's the first 20% come from? Substats. Next one is Noblesse. She's team-wide Bennett on skill isn't that good regardless of what the sheets say. I mean, she's not Bennett though. Like the buff is smaller. So damage percent, you're always getting this. You're probably getting like 50 from whatever support buffs you have on your team. A passive somewhere that gives you another 50-ish. Is there anything else we should assume as like our default theoretical hyper carry? A lot of 123% damage from Sig. True! you! Whatever, fuck it. Let's do another 50. Varesa gets 100 from the set bonus, and supports give, yeah, something like this. Let's say where you've got crit ascension, main stat, sub stat. I guess we should probably assume less damage percent if we're saying the set bonus gives crit. Let's say you're using a like 670 standard 5-star weapon like Jadewing Spear or Skyward Heart. 10,000 motion value. Hypercarry with Bennett, damage buff, and shred. With Nicole, damage buff and shred. I guess first we can take a look at like non-hex Hypercarry. Nicole, which adds bounty. And let's just round it up to 900 on the flat attack buff. We lose the noblesse. We gain the bounty set. I mean, non-hex. Okay, you're averaging less than this. Maybe like 750. And then you have the motion value that gets added and percentage of Bennett. Nicole, no bounty. Assuming that either you already have the bounty set without her, that you don't get Hexerai from her presence, so you can't use the bounty set on her, is kind of just worse than Bennett. And I guess I could also have Aquila Bennett. It's 103. Percentage of Aquila Bennett. I didn't assume the 15% from C6 Bennett. I'm assuming this is not a pyro carry. Non-hex, non-pyro. Let's take a look at something else. So we can take a look at hex non-pyro hyper carry. So hex non-pyro hyper carry, we're just adding the extra motion value on Nicole, right? So this is times 4. Then we can take a look at some non-hyper carry team. Non-hex, non-pyro, non-hyper carry. Bennett. And then instead of damage buff here, we get sub DPS. So let's say we're losing like a 50% or some shit here on the damage percent, and our motion value maybe is a bit lower, like 8,000 instead. Okay, and now we need to add a second character. Base attack 2, attack percent 2, flat attack 2, total attack 2. Maybe you don't have a 5-star weapon on your off-fielder like that, right? Maybe you're on a battle pass weapon, deathmatch. So let's say 800 base attack percent. Noblesse would be like half uptime. Power resonance would still be here. Maybe they don't get that extra, like, attack buff. What is he calculating? I'm trying to come up with, like, a relative value guide for Nicole. I think it can get a little confusing of, like, how much is Nicole going to bring to a team. It'll be much easier to explain once I'm done with it, and I'm almost done, so. Don't you cap the attack buff with no ER on Nicole? I mean, you can cap the attack buff in many of these teams, yes. You won't necessarily cap it. I'm assuming it's capped just because we're being optimistic a little. Nicole's attack buff isn't that easy to cap, but also the difference between it being capped and it not being capped isn't that big. Like, it's not like you're going to be at 300 attack instead of 600. You'll be at, like, 550 instead of 600. It's not as big as you think it is. But yeah, so if we want to make a list of a few specific cases, so it can be Hex, it can be Hyper, and it can be plus Bounty. I shouldn't say Hyper, I should say off-field or sub-DPS. None of these things. So non-hex, hyper carry, if you're not getting any value from the bounty, it's at minus 10%-ish. There are 3 main factors that influence how good Nicole will be for your team. 1, is your carry Hexerai, yes or no? 2, are you playing a hyper carry, or is your damage split between a lot of characters? And 3, are you able to get bounty without Nicole? And if you're not, are you able to get bounty with Nicole, right? Because if you could already get bounty without Nicole, then bounty, like, her allowing you to use bounty doesn't do anything because you already had bounty. But if you can't use bounty without Nicole, but you still can't use bounty with Nicole, like in Varesa teams, it's also, like, you also don't get the upside of bounty. So, does her presence enable the bounty set? These are the main 3 factors. And each one is individually, like, 8 to 12%-ish, generally. With none of them, she's worse than Bennett. With any of the 3, she's around a similar level to Bennett, and with 2 or more, she should generally be high. Is that why Kinich is a big winner? Kinich doesn't take the Hex, but he does take these 2, because you use Emilie in his team. Durin is already part of Kinich's good teams, but Hexerai Resonance isn't. And then with Kinich specifically, you also get the extra upside of Hexerai Resonance making Durin's shred higher, right? Also, another reason why this might be a little bit better for Wanderer. I'm not sure exactly how Wanderer rotations line up. I don't know if you have 19 point something seconds of field time to fill with Wanderer. Like, if you're using Bennett instead of Nicole, is your Farazan burst ready when your rotation is over? I don't even know if it is. And then there's also the fact that just in general, these Animo carries have awful ER requirements on Bennett. And Nicole doesn't have ER requirements, effectively. Because especially in these teams where the burst is kind of cosmetic, you can just skip the burst if you don't have the energy. And that's fine. Super truth. What is that? I like that. That's a good one.